Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Rowe. It's time to review Don't Look Up. This is the newest film from Adam McKay. It's coming to Netflix on Christmas, and it follows this recent trajectory of political films that he's been doing since The Big Short and Vice. This one's about two scientists who discover that a comet is coming towards Earth with a 100% chance of impact, and they have to try to warn people about it. It focuses a lot on how they're trying to alert the public and mobilize people to do something about it, because in this world there is something they can do. And so the real antagonist is not whether we can or can't do it, it's whether or not it will happen. What does that sound like to you? It's very obvious. This film touched on a lot of stuff we have seen in the last 4 years, and especially during COVID times, even though I know this film was written beforehand. Well, it was filmed during COVID, and I think they adapted the movie to reflect that. And it's pretty obvious in some parts that they were making like direct comparisons. It looks at the things that I would say are the most disappointing about our society right now. And I also like that it doesn't take a decidedly left or right look at it. It just says, this is a mess that we're all a part of. And even though the film has you laughing throughout, it definitely is not funny when you think about it, because we literally live in the world that Adam McKay has shown to us. I think it is like so scarily close to how things actually are right now. It's kind of funny how the movie can go so absurd and still feel like, yeah, this is still our world. And I kind of loved getting to know this world that Adam McKay builds here and all the very funny, goofy characters in it. You got President Meryl Streep, her son, Jonah Hill, who has a position in the White House. You have a tech billionaire played by Mark Rylance, the pop star played by Ariana Grande. You have the media, the scientists. It is weird to say that the movie's fun because it's about some of the most distressing things that you can imagine. And Adam McKay has clearly channeled a lot of frustration into this film. And yet it's very funny and it's kind of a good time. And I like that it's all those things, because if it was just a very distressing, on the nose satire without much fun to be had, I think the movie would be taking itself too seriously. And a lot of times this movie does just go right for the jokes. A lot of the funniest lines in this movie are kind of just ridiculous and out of nowhere, and they don't really have to do anything with making a point. I actually did like when the jokes were more pointed though. Sometimes the jokes were really funny whether or not they were pointed at something. And other times I was like, are we forgetting what we're supposed to do? Like, I just wasn't really sure. There were a lot of choices in this that were a little bit confusing for me. Sometimes I did have the impression that it was obvious and cartoonish to an unnecessary degree. Like, I think some characters were so dumb and so obviously dumb, like the extent to which people are distractible with their phones. And the point is trying to make about how we're kind of like, duh, duh, duh. Like, that was a little bit annoying to hear over and over again, because it's a really easy point to make. A lot of what he goes for are almost cheap shots because it's so easy to point out. And yet at the same time, they're really important and good things to point out. And so it's not even like he's holding a microscope up to society. It's just like, here you go. I don't think it ever was so dumb that it was just phones bad. It tried to make the point that phones are just increasing this problem of our immediate pleasure-seeking desires. Yeah. And how that plays into everything else in the movie. Like, I don't think it was ever too simple. I think the phones are bad point is kind of interesting, because I do think it did go for that a little bit. Like, yeah, phones are enjoyable. TikTok videos are enjoyable. I don't know that it has this connection to our incompetence or not. Yeah, but every joke they made about the phones was also funny. So if they were making bad, annoying jokes about phones, I would be more annoyed by it. The humor was off and on for me, I gotta say. But overall, very funny movie. Like, I definitely laughed a lot at it. And it was really fun to see in a theater too. And I think it's kind of too bad that the movie's going just straight to Netflix, because I think a lot of people could have a good time seeing this with an audience. It's definitely a laugh out loud film, so I do agree, like, definitely see it with an audience. It's also hard to be funny for everybody with every single joke, so I do give it a lot of leeway for some of the jokes not landing with me, because overall there were some really funny moments. Whenever Mark Rylance's character was on screen, every time he was allowed to do something that he should not be allowed to do, it was fucking funny. And it was really funny because of how vacant Mark Rylance plays that guy. Like, he has nothing behind the eyes. There's a moment where he gets a close-up sort of monologue, and you're just watching his face and like trying to figure out like what is behind the eyes. And it's such a bizarre performance, but I was really into it. It was one of the best in the movie. Leonardo DiCaprio in the lead role, I think, is the strongest performance here. I think he is the emotional core of the film because of the frustration that his character brings. And he has one scene in particular where he has a major outburst, and I thought to myself, well, there's the Oscar clip should he be nominated. I also like that his character was a little more complex and not necessarily like a moral hero. I felt like they did push this character a little bit to his limits and see what he's really made out of, whereas other characters, I felt like they did not do that. Most of the supporting cast here is not meant to be developed, and so it's fine to have them be like diverting and funny. But Jennifer Lawrence's character, I think, is maybe like the most obviously not good part about the film, because that character was never interesting to me, and they didn't dive into her really at all in an interesting way. The way that she ends up, you know, with Timothée Chalamet's character, I just didn't understand like what we were even supposed to glean from that. The character was a little too cartoonish. Like DiCaprio did a really good job because he was more straight-laced than everybody else. But Jennifer Lawrence's character, I wanted her to be somebody more. I didn't really like Jennifer Lawrence here. I think it's mostly due to casting. I wish that this was a fresh face. And it made a character that I already felt like didn't have a lot going for them even more kind of stale and boring, because I know what Jennifer Lawrence is doing and I know what she's gonna go for. And I literally like to see a take that we didn't necessarily expect. Yeah, I think if there was anybody in the cast that was a weak link, it was her character. Even a character like Timothée Chalamet, who I expected to be this small cameo in like 1 or 2 scenes, you know, I felt very satisfied with his screen time, and every character got an opportunity to be really funny. Everyone up to Ariana Grande, who also gets like this crazy huge musical number in the movie. Loved Cate Blanchett in this as the morning show news anchor. She was just so like dead in the face. Rob Morgan was also a standout, providing a contrast of seriousness to the circus that's going on around him. Jonah Hill definitely earned some of the biggest laughs in the movie. It's clear that he did a lot of improv in his scenes. I think everybody kind of gets some really funny improv lines. Ron Perlman, also really funny. Again, just everybody's funny. I think the ending is really strong for this film. I could see people actually feeling emotional. The scene towards the end, I did think there was something about it that registered to me as a little bit silly, even though it was like a serious scene. I think that did prevent me from feeling the emotional impact a little bit, but I will say that the editor, Hank Corwin, throws in some stock footage of nature. They'll flash for half a second, but they'll surprisingly like get you in the feels. And by the end of the film, I did feel that signature Adam McKay frustration, which has caused me to enjoy his past 2 films so much. Feeling like I knew what was coming around the corner a lot of the time, I was exhausted by the end of this movie. Like, I know you're gonna go for that here, and I know you're gonna go for that here. However, it does a good enough job at dissecting society that I forgive a lot of that. And I actually do really like this film, and I think it does work. One criticism I have is that the cinematography was not as good as it could have been. I know that Adam McKay shoots for editing, and I definitely respect that. I think it's cool that he finds the movie and the rhythm in the editing room, and that he and his editor are not afraid to put things together in unexpected ways. But oftentimes they're selecting shots that are a little bit like ugly or don't do the best job at like showing you the information you want to see. Like in particular, Leonardo DiCaprio's rant on the news, I felt like some of the shots they used towards the end like took me out of it. There were extreme close-ups where it just didn't need to be, where it felt like the shots were just covering up for something. Like they didn't have footage of someone saying this sentence, so they just threw in a shot of something very random. Like that happened a lot. And it happened enough times that it started to annoy me. Although it's hard to find the intention of every shot, I think the movie was very well paced. The 2-hour, 30-minute runtime really flew by for me. I was just cruising the whole movie, I will say that. I completely agree with that. It was actually stunning how this did not feel like 2.5 hours. I also enjoy that this film feels like it's for an audience. They put together an ensemble that everyone's going to enjoy. It has a pretty sizable budget, and it just really goes for the laughs. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this. I would give it like a pretty broad recommendation. Yep. Even to the Adam McKay haters, I think you're going to find yourself just laughing a little bit at this movie. Like, how are you not going to at least laugh at some of the jokes? And therefore, you might kind of enjoy it at least a little bit. I do think that this film is an Oscars contender, pretty big one. If Vice and The Big Short could both get nominated, I don't see why this wouldn't. I think generally people are going to like it better than Vice. I don't think it's going to get the same rave reviews as The Big Short. It's also memorable because it's going for something big and it's making a very clear statement. Vice and The Big Short both got nominated for Best Director. I know a lot of people aren't predicting McKay right now, but just watch the hell out is all you can really say at this point. I think screenplay comes with the package. I think editing comes with the package. Do actors come with the package is a great question. I think DiCaprio would be most likely to get nominated out of the cast. As I said, there's a very clear Oscar clip for him, which actually had our audience applauding, but it doesn't feel like he needs the nomination here as much as something else like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or Wolf of Wall Street.
That's also kind of how I feel about Meryl Streep. It's not like one of her best performances, but she's really funny and good in it, and if anybody in supporting gets nominated, I think it would be her. That category is looking really stacked, but again, like, we had Sam Rockwell get in for Vice, and he took out somebody that I liked.
Jennifer Lawrence definitely, like, don't even worry about her. If anybody else gets in, I think like maybe Mark Rylance, like a little bit has a shot.
I would not mind if he got in.
It's gonna get a song nomination. Ariana Grande, Kid Cudi, they did a song. It's funny. It's a big moment in the movie. In the movie, not in the credits. The score from Nicholas Britell I thought was really good. It was a very eclectic mix of styles, and sometimes it was used for comedic purposes where it would be playing like ironically over someone's speech. I think that would maybe be worthy of a nomination, and it might happen. It might be like that 5 or 6 kind of on the cusp of getting in there.
And visual effects might even happen too. There were a decent amount of visual effects shots, and they were surprisingly good looking. It doesn't have enough where it's a guarantee that it would get in, but it probably helps that it's a Best Picture nominee.
Also, definitely a big SAG Ensemble contender. I would not mind if it won at all.
Overall, I did not feel totally in sync with a lot of choices that were made for this film, but I do like it and respect it, and it is very memorable. So I'd give it a very strong 7 out of 10.
I did not feel like this movie had any major missteps. I was really just along for the ride. I was having fun, and I think it's a really strong satire of our times. I would go with a 9 out of 10. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Which way should you look?